that the world is full of writing mistakes, but more so editing mistakes. This goes on from billboards to social media, of course, newspapers, magazines, and even to tattoos. I've got a little collection of people with tattoos that are spelled wrong, which is a big editing problem when it's across your chest. So a lot of these, the effort here is to cut down on mistakes, and which cost you money and cost you customers sometimes. Sometimes it makes you look like an idiot. And really, this is a bottom line issue when we're in business. Now, newspapers and magazines, they solved this a long time ago because it's in their interest to do so. In going around and going inside businesses and doing some training, consulting, whatever you call it, workshops, it dawned on me many years ago that in business, they really don't know how to edit. And a lot of what happens in business is somebody looks at this, it's lousy. They say, this needs to be rewritten. What happens when you do that is it costs you time, money, people get angry. It takes on a greater importance than it should. And a friend of mine here at the journalism school, he and I used to go out to corporations, and he one time said to me, I've never seen a piece of writing inside a corporation that couldn't have been fixed with editing. I mean, I totally agree with him. I think the people almost always know what they're talking about. They just need a good editor. Also, unless you've been to a journalism school, you're unable to take a course in editing anywhere, get any formal training from somebody. There are all kinds of writing courses everywhere, but 50% of this function is getting it ready to be published. So, the chapter that's in the book covers a writing process which was revealed to me down at the Poynter Institute in Florida. It's a think tank. There are lots of writing processes. This one is simplified, easy to remember, and it works for everything from cover letters to large magazine articles. Social media will work just fine on a one-paragraph item. It also has a 6-step editing system that I devised because I couldn't find a good editing system anywhere that I could copy or cannibalize or cite. So I devised this myself, and not everybody buys into this or they don't apply it, but to me, I use it. And what it does is that it breaks the editing process down into steps, manageable steps. And in my mind, is the way I try to sell it to students and others, is that you can use this to turn editing into a kind of a word game, take the mental pressure out of it. And it's really based on my reading of brain research, is that we can only keep 3 ideas up there in our mind at the time, and we're probably to have 2 of those in the background. Anything we're doing, driving a car, doing anything. So that if we're editing, there are about 6 things we could be looking for at a time: grammar, punctuation, the facts, the story telling. So there are distinct items that we're looking for, and you can't keep your mind on them all at the same time. And that's where the editing mistakes occur. Now, we also know a lot of things from research, and not many people seem to know this, but there are all kinds of readability measurements, and you can use those. If you know what your readability is, you can use that with editing to make it more readable to people. People will retain the message better, and in business, that translates to revenue. So we know that. We also know that web pages are not designed for the way people read web pages. For instance, the most common length of characters across a line of text on a web page is about 80 characters. If you pick up a best-selling book, they're going to go about 45 characters, 50 characters across a line. And that's about an alphabet and a half, maybe slightly more. And so you're not wiggling your head back and forth to read this. But web pages have really not been designed for the reader. So there's a lot of stuff like that that affects readability. So you may have written something well, but if you have sort of violated the principles between the word and the reader, they are not going to retain the message no matter how brilliantly you write it. Just for instance, you do a little editing and you start to edit everything that's around you if you've had some formal training in editing. I'm driving one time up in Wisconsin. I see a large red barn there and it has a huge sign that says large women's shoe liquidation sale. So you think, now what's large, the women or the shoes? It's really the sale, of course. But what that illustrates is that when you pile adjectives in front of a noun, every one you put in front, you have now created a big barrier. It tells me that when you have more than one adjective in front of a noun, you've got a problem. So you tend to put those in behind the nouns like the great poets. You won't find W.B. Yeats doing that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. I started out with the example of a comedian at the time of the Japanese earthquake. He gets on Twitter and pokes fun at the Japanese. The result was that he loses a very lucrative television contract to advertise an insurance company. But it's almost once a week we see people their careers going down, and some great crisis has happened because they hop on the keyboard and type out something that they never should have. They should have waited, take a deep breath, show it to somebody else, get a little editing. They could have saved themselves a lot of trouble. We see a lot of this kind of thing. I think what we're seeing now is in a way a return of what we always called the gatekeeper. It's called in academic circles. Used to be just the editor. Nothing got published without an editor taking a good look at it because this was a commercial enterprise. Now we publish for free. Everybody's a publisher. And so people are publishing without editing. Now we are seeing there's too much information out there, number one. So we're seeing the emergence of a word curator. That's a gatekeeper. That's an editor. In other words, somebody's going to filter this for what's important and what's well done. And part of what you're going to see that is going to rise to the top on a curated bunch of information is the stuff that is more readable, clearer, and it's probably been edited. So in some way, we're going to see this emerge once again to a traditional system of where we want our information to pass through somebody who knows something about it and who can make it clear and who can tell us whether this is important and useful to us, because otherwise we are trying to drink information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. It's too much. I think the other thing that's emerging now is that a lot of us have been doing a lot of our reading offline. In other words, we take a lot of PDFs, download them, and you carry them around. I can carry 8 gigabytes on my keychain, plug that in anywhere I want, and read it without being online. For a lot of our work, we're going to do it more offline, and when we all have a tablet, we're going to be reading that way. And the tablet is getting more and more and more like a magazine page, which everybody has always loved. And then when you're reading that way, the mistakes really pop at you because we know that we don't read as well on screen. We can read faster and catch more errors in print on a traditional magazine page, which is brilliant in its reproduction. Now, we'll get a pad that has reproduction as brilliant as a magazine page, and the errors are going to glare at us, I think. And that is going to say to everybody, don't publish this until we get a good edit on it. So I think somehow in some version we're going to go full circle from this largely unedited atmosphere where everyone's a publisher to a mediated atmosphere, and that's going to be, and we're going to demand that if we have to pay for content. We're going to demand some quality control, if you will, at the end of the factory line here. If we're paying for it, I don't want spelling errors in the headlines and so forth.